The blood on Olivia Schofield's hands had dried to a rusty brown as she stumbled through the pines, her breath coming in ragged gasps that tore at her throat like claws. Behind her, the shouts of men echoed through the Colorado wilderness, growing fainter as night descended on the mountains west of Central City. October 1876 had brought an early frost, and the thin fabric of her torn dress offered little protection against the biting chill. Her husband would kill her if he found her, she was certain of that now. The wound on her forehead throbbed where Vernon had struck her with his ring-laden hand. This time had been different. This time, when he'd raised his fist, she'd grabbed the fireplace poker. She hadn't meant to hit him so hard. A branch snapped somewhere to her left. Olivia froze, pressing herself against the rough bark of a ponderosa pine. The forest had grown dark, moonlight filtering through the canopy in silver patches that barely illuminated the ground at her feet. She'd been running for hours, directionless except for away. Away from Vernon, away from their cabin, away from the life that had become her prison. Another twig cracked, closer this time. Olivia bit her lip to keep from crying out, tasting blood as her teeth broke the skin. She couldn't go back, not after what had happened. Vernon might be dead, or he might be hunting her. Either way, the law would be after her soon enough. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and imposing. Olivia stifled a scream, her fingers clawing at the tree bark. "Madam." The voice was deep but gentle, nothing like Vernon's alcohol-roughened growl. "You all right?" She remained silent, frantically searching for an escape route. The stranger took another step forward, and moonlight revealed a weathered face beneath the brim of a cowboy hat. His expression wasn't threatening but concerned. "You're bleeding," he said, gesturing toward her head, "and you look half frozen." "I'm fine," she whispered, though her shivering body betrayed her words. "Please just leave me be." The man stayed where he was, keeping a respectful distance. "Those men back there, they looking for you." Olivia's heart hammered against her ribs. "How did you heard them calling a woman's name?" "Olivia, was it?" He shifted his weight, and she noticed the holstered pistol at his hip. "I don't mean to frighten you, madam, but you're in a bad way out here alone." "I can't go back," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "My husband," the shouts grew louder suddenly, accompanied by the distant baying of hounds. Vernon must have gathered men from town. Panic clawed at her throat, and Olivia pushed away from the tree, ready to run again despite her exhaustion. The cowboy glanced over his shoulder, then back at her. His eyes, kind but determined, caught hers. "He won't find you," he said firmly. "Not if you come with me now." "You don't understand." "I understand enough." He extended a hand. "Name's Gabriel Quinn. I've got a cabin not far from here. You'll be safe there while we figure things out." Olivia hesitated, weighing her options. Stay and face Vernon and his rage, or trust this stranger with the gentle eyes and firm voice. The hounds bayed again, closer now. She took his hand. Gabriel led her swiftly through the forest, his movements sure despite the darkness. They traveled in silence for nearly an hour, climbing steadily upward into the mountains. Olivia stumbled frequently, her body near collapse from exhaustion and cold, but Gabriel's steady grip kept her moving forward. Finally, a small cabin appeared, nestled against a rocky outcropping. No light shone from its single window, but Gabriel approached it confidently. "It's not much," he said, his voice low, "but it's warm and dry." Inside, he quickly lit a lantern, revealing a sparse but tidy interior: a small table with 2 chairs, a cast-iron stove, a narrow bed in one corner, and shelves stocked with provisions. Gabriel immediately set to building a fire in the stove while Olivia stood uncertainly by the door. "You should sit before you fall down," he said without looking up. "And there's a blanket on the bed." Olivia wrapped the rough wool around her shoulders and sank onto one of the wooden chairs, her legs finally giving out. As warmth began to fill the cabin, she felt the full weight of her exhaustion. "Let me take a look at that cut," Gabriel said, approaching with a cloth dampened from his canteen. Olivia flinched away instinctively, and he stopped. "I won't hurt you," he said, his voice softer than before. "But head wounds need tending." After a moment, she nodded, allowing him to gently clean the gash on her forehead. His touch was careful, nothing like Vernon's harsh hands. "It's not too deep," he said. "Might leave a scar, but you won't bleed to death." "Thank you," she whispered, the first words she'd spoken since they'd left the forest. Gabriel nodded and moved away, giving her space. He put a kettle on the stove and prepared 2 cups of coffee, placing one before her without comment. "Why are you helping me?" Olivia finally asked, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. Gabriel considered her question as he settled into the chair across from her. "Out here, folks help each other. It's how we survive." He paused. "And I know trouble when I see it. You don't know what I've done." "I know enough," he repeated his earlier words. "I know a scared woman running from something bad when I see one." He took a sip of his coffee. "I've been in these mountains for 8 years. I mind my business, but I hear things when I go into town. Vernon Schofield isn't known for his kindness." Olivia's eyes widened at the mention of her husband's name. "Small towns talk," Gabriel explained. "And men like him make themselves known." "He'll kill me if he finds me," she said, her voice barely audible. Gabriel's expression hardened. "He'll have to get through me first." "You don't understand." Olivia's voice caught. "I think I killed him." Gabriel didn't respond immediately, studying her face in the lantern light. "You want to tell me what happened," and so she did. The words poured out of her how she'd met Vernon in Denver 3 years ago, how charming he'd been at first, how quickly things had changed after they married and moved to his cabin outside Central City. The first time he hit her, the increasingly frequent beatings, how he'd locked her in the root cellar for 2 days last winter when she'd burned the bread. "Tonight was worse," she said, staring down at her hands. "He'd been drinking with his friends in town. When he came home, he was in a rage about something. I don't even know what. He grabbed me by the hair, slammed my head against the wall." She touched the cut on her forehead. "When he came at me again, I grabbed the poker. I just wanted him to stop." Her voice broke. There was so much blood. Gabriel remained silent throughout her story, his face impassive but his eyes attentive. "I ran," she finished. "I didn't check if he was breathing, I just ran." "You defended yourself," Gabriel said finally. "Any court would see that." Olivia gave a bitter laugh. "Vernon's family owns half the businesses in Central City. His brother is the sheriff. There would be no fair trial for me." Gabriel nodded slowly, understanding the reality of frontier justice. "Then we need to get you somewhere else, somewhere safe." "We?" Olivia looked up, surprised by the inclusion. "I won't send you out there alone," he said simply. "Get some rest tonight. You can take the bed. I'll keep watch, make sure no one comes looking this way." "I can't ask that of you. You didn't ask." He stood, placing his empty cup on the table. "I'm offering." Olivia wanted to protest further, but exhaustion was overtaking her. The warmth of the cabin, the first moment of safety she'd felt in years, and the emotional toll of the night had drained her completely. Gabriel seemed to understand. "Sleep," he said gently. "Tomorrow's problems will wait for tomorrow." As Olivia curled up on the narrow bed, still wrapped in the blanket, she watched Gabriel settle into a chair by the window, his rifle resting across his knees. She didn't know this man, had no reason to trust him, and yet something in his steady presence comforted her more than anything had in years. "Thank you," she murmured as sleep began to claim her. Gabriel turned from the window, his expression softening. "Rest easy, Mrs. Schofield." You're safe here." For the first time in 3 years, Olivia believed those words might be true. Morning arrived with a pale, watery light filtering through the cabin's single window. Olivia woke disoriented, momentarily panicked until the events of the previous night came rushing back. She sat up quickly, wincing at the pain in her head. Gabriel stood by the stove, stirring something in a cast iron pot. He looked as if he hadn't slept, but his movements were still precise and deliberate. "Morning," he said, glancing her way. "There's water in that basin if you want to wash up." "Breakfast is nearly ready." Olivia rose gingerly, every muscle aching from her desperate flight through the forest. She cleaned her face and hands with the cold water, careful around the cut on her forehead. Her reflection in the small mirror hanging above the basin was shocking. A bruise had bloomed across half her face, and her eyes were haunted. "Thank you for letting me stay," she said, taking a seat at the table. Gabriel placed a bowl of simple but hearty porridge before her. "You feeling strong enough to talk about what comes next?" Olivia nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at her. What could come next? She had no money, no possessions beyond the clothes she wore, and a husband who might be dead by her hand. "First, we need to know what happened back at your cabin," Gabriel said, sitting across from her with his own bowl. "If your husband is dead, that changes things. And if he isn't," Olivia's voice was barely a whisper, "then we need to get you far away from here fast." He ate a spoonful of porridge, considering. "I have a friend in town who might be willing to find out without drawing attention." "You would risk that for me?" Olivia asked, bewildered by this stranger's willingness to help. Gabriel's weathered face revealed little. "Like I said, out here we look after each other. Besides," he added with a ghost of a smile, "I've never much cared for Vernon Schofield or his kind. What will your friend tell people? Won't they ask questions? Oscar's good at not being noticed. He can visit the saloon, listen to the talk." Gabriel stood, placing his empty bowl in a basin. "I need to check my trap lines anyway. I'll head down toward town, find Oscar, and be back before nightfall." Olivia felt a rush of fear at the thought of being left alone. What if someone comes while you're gone? "No one knows about this place except Oscar." Gabriel retrieved his rifle and checked it methodically. "Keep the door barred. There's a loaded shotgun under the bed if you need it, though I don't expect trouble." He pulled on a worn leather jacket and placed his hat on his head. At the door, he paused. "There's food in the pantry if you get hungry. Rest today. You're safe here." With that, he was gone, leaving Olivia alone in the silent cabin. The hours dragged by slowly. Olivia found herself jumping at every sound: the cry of a hawk, the rustle of wind through pine needles, the creak of the cabin settling. By midday, restlessness drove her to explore her temporary sanctuary. Gabriel's possessions were few and utilitarian. Books stacked neatly on a shelf, mostly practical guides to wilderness survival, though she was surprised to find a well-worn copy of Walden and a volume of Whitman's poetry. A trunk at the foot of the bed contained spare clothing, all mended carefully but showing years of wear. On a small table by the window sat a tarnished silver frame holding a daguerreotype of a woman and a young girl, both smiling faintly, as was the custom for such photographs. The resemblance between Gabriel and the child was unmistakable: the same determined set of the jaw, the same thoughtful eyes. Olivia wondered where they were now, this woman and girl who must be Gabriel's wife and daughter. She placed the photograph back exactly as she'd found it, feeling like an intruder in this private space. To occupy herself, she decided to repay Gabriel's kindness in the small way she could by preparing a proper meal for his return. The pantry was modest but well-stocked. Dried beans, salt pork, flour, coffee, and, to her delight, a small bag of dried apples. In a root cellar accessed through a trapdoor in the floor, she found potatoes, onions, and carrots. With these simple ingredients, Olivia set about making a stew that would be ready by evening. The familiar work soothed her frayed nerves. Cooking had always been her refuge, even in Vernon's house. In the kitchen, she could lose herself in the rhythm of chopping and stirring, momentarily forgetting her fears. Vernon had often praised her cooking, sometimes the only kind words he offered. On good days, her meals could placate him. On bad days, nothing could. As the stew simmered, filling the cabin with a rich aroma, Olivia allowed herself to contemplate her situation. If Vernon was dead, she was a murderess. If he lived, she was a fugitive wife who had attacked her husband, still a crime in the eyes of the law. Either way, her future looked bleak. Unless she could disappear, the idea took root as she stirred the pot. She could leave Colorado territory entirely, go west to California or north to Montana. Change her name, start anew. Women did it, she knew. She'd heard whispers in town of wives who'd fled bad situations, rumors of new lives forged from the ashes of old ones. But she would need help. Money, transportation, and a head start before Vernon or the law caught up with her. The sound of approaching footsteps interrupted her thoughts. Olivia froze, listening intently. One set of footsteps, heavy but measured. Gabriel's walk. Relief flooded her, followed immediately by shame at her suspicion. This man had done nothing but help her, yet her instinct was still to fear. The door opened and Gabriel stepped inside, bringing with him the crisp scent of pine and cold mountain air. He removed his hat, revealing hair damp with sweat despite the cool day. His expression was grim. "Your husband is alive," he said without preamble. Olivia's knees weakened, and she sank onto a chair. A confusing mixture of relief and renewed fear washed over her. How badly is he hurt? Bad enough that he's laid up, not bad enough to kill him. Gabriel hung his coat on a peg by the door. He's got a fractured skull and lost a fair amount of blood, but the doctor says he'll recover. And, is he looking for me? He's told everyone that you attacked him without provocation, that he was just trying to stop you from running off with another man. Gabriel's jaw tightened. Sheriff's put out a notice for your arrest. There's a party of men searching the mountains as we speak. The room seemed to spin around Olivia. They'll hang me. No, Gabriel said firmly. They won't get the chance. What do you mean? Gabriel crossed to the stove, lifting the lid of the pot and inhaling deeply. This smells mighty fine, he said, momentarily distracted. You didn't have to cook. It was the least I could do, Olivia said automatically. Please, what did you mean just now? Gabriel sat across from her, leaning forward with his forearms on the table. Oscar says there's a wagon train leaving Denver for Oregon in 2 weeks. If we can get you there, you could join them. New name, new start. Denver is days away, Olivia said, feeling overwhelmed. And I have no money for such a journey. I have some savings, Gabriel said simply. Not much, but enough to get you started. Olivia stared at him, bewildered. Why would you do that? Give your money to a stranger? Gabriel was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than before. My sister was married to a man like your husband. He beat her for years while the town looked the other way, called it a domestic matter. When she finally tried to leave him, he killed her. His eyes met Olivia's, filled with old pain. I was working a cattle drive in Texas. Didn't even know she was planning to run. By the time I got back, she was buried and her husband was walking free. I'm so sorry, Olivia whispered. So am I. Sorry I wasn't there when she needed me. Gabriel's gaze was steady. I can be here for you, though. I can help you get away before Vernon does to you what Abigail's husband did to her. Olivia felt tears well in her eyes, overwhelmed by this man's kindness and the tragedy behind it. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to. Just promise you'll make a good life somewhere else. Gabriel stood, moving to serve the stew she'd prepared. We'll leave at dawn. It's too dangerous to stay this close to Central City with men actively searching. Where will we go? I have another cabin farther north near a place called Good. It's more isolated, better for lying low until we can arrange your passage to Denver. He placed a steaming bowl before her. We should be able to reach it in 2 days if we push hard. As they ate, Gabriel outlined his plan. They would travel by night when possible, avoiding the main trails and settlements. He knew the mountains intimately, could navigate paths that Vernon's search parties wouldn't think to check. From the northern cabin, they could connect with the stagecoach line that ran between Hot Sulphur Springs and Denver. What will you do after? Olivia asked as they finished their meal. After I'm gone, Gabriel shrugged. Same as I've been doing, trapping, hunting, keeping to myself. You'd be welcome to come to Oregon, she said impulsively. There'd be nothing to hold you here once I'm gone, and you'd have to leave anyway if they discover you helped me. A faint smile touched Gabriel's lips. I appreciate that. Let's focus on getting you there first. That night, despite Gabriel's insistence that she take the bed again, Olivia made a pallet on the floor, refusing to displace him for a second night. As she lay awake, listening to his steady breathing from across the room, she wondered at the strange twist of fate that had brought her to this place, to this man. She'd spent 3 years married to Vernon, a man who had promised to cherish her but had only caused her pain. Now a stranger was risking everything to save her. Tomorrow they would leave, beginning a journey that might lead to freedom or capture. Olivia closed her eyes, finding that, for the first time in years, hope had taken root alongside her fear. Dawn was just a faint promise on the eastern horizon when Gabriel woke Olivia with a gentle hand on her shoulder. They prepared in near silence, gathering only what they would need for the journey. Gabriel packed efficiently food, ammunition, basic medical supplies, a change of clothes for each of them, and a small canvas tent. Take this, he said, handing her a worn but sturdy pair of trousers and a flannel shirt. Your dress will draw attention, and it's not practical for where we're going. Olivia hesitated only briefly before accepting the clothing. Propriety seemed a small concern compared to survival. She changed behind a blanket Gabriel respectfully hung across one corner of the cabin, surprised by the relief she felt in the practical garments after years of restrictive dresses. When she emerged, Gabriel nodded approvingly. Those were my sisters, he explained. She kept them here for when she visited, said riding astride in a dress was torture. They fit well enough, Olivia said, touched by this additional connection to the woman Gabriel had failed to save. Thank you. He handed her a heavy coat and a wide-brimmed hat. Keep that pulled low. From a distance, you'll pass for a young man. They left as the first rays of sunlight pierced the trees, Gabriel leading the way with confident strides. He carried the bulk of their supplies in a pack on his back, a rifle slung across his shoulders. Olivia followed with a smaller pack, focusing on matching his pace despite her still aching body. The morning air was crisp and clean, the forest around them coming alive with the calls of birds and the rustling of small animals. In other circumstances, Olivia might have found the wilderness journey exhilarating. Now, every snapping twig set her nerves on edge. Every distant sound might be the approach of Vernon's search party. They traveled steadily upward, following game trails and sometimes no trail at all. Gabriel seemed to navigate by an internal compass, occasionally stopping to check landmarks or consult the position of the sun. By midday, they had climbed high enough that the trees thinned, offering glimpses of the vast mountain ranges extending in all directions. During a brief rest, Gabriel handed Olivia a strip of jerky and pointed toward a distant valley. Central City's down that way. We're well outside the area they'll be searching, but we can't get complacent. How much farther to your other cabin? Olivia asked, stretching her legs. They ached from the unaccustomed exercise, but she was determined not to slow their progress. We won't make it today, Gabriel said. We'll camp tonight in a sheltered spot I know, then push on tomorrow. Should reach it by nightfall tomorrow if the weather holds. The weather, however, had other plans. By late afternoon, clouds had gathered over the mountains, dark and heavy with the promise of rain. The temperature dropped rapidly and the wind picked up, carrying the scent of approaching moisture. We need to find shelter sooner than I'd planned, Gabriel said, scanning the increasingly hostile sky. There's a rock overhang about an hour from here. It'll have to do. The rain began as a gentle patter but quickly intensified to a driving downpour that penetrated even the densest tree cover. Olivia followed Gabriel's increasingly hurried pace, her borrowed clothes soon soaked through despite the coat. The hat kept the worst of the rain from her face, but water ran in rivulets down her neck and back. Just as the light was failing completely, they reached the promised overhang, a deep recess in a rocky hillside that offered protection from the rain and wind. Gabriel quickly gathered what dry kindling he could find beneath the natural shelter and, with impressive skill, soon had a small fire burning. "Take off those wet clothes," he instructed, turning his back to give her privacy. "Wrap yourself in the blanket from my pack. Being wet and cold out here can kill faster than any bullet." Olivia didn't argue, stripping off the sodden garments and wrapping herself in the thick wool blanket Gabriel had provided. Her teeth chattered uncontrollably, her body shivering violently as the warmth of the fire began to penetrate her chilled core. Gabriel had changed as well, donning dry clothes from his pack. He hung their wet garments on makeshift lines near enough to the fire to dry but not close enough to burn. Then he prepared a simple meal of hard biscuits and dried meat, along with hot coffee that was the most welcome thing Olivia had ever tasted. As night fully descended, and the rain continued its relentless percussion against the earth outside their shelter, they sat close to the fire in companionable silence. Olivia studied Gabriel's profile in the flickering light, noting the strong line of his jaw, the slight crease between his brows that suggested he frowned more often than he smiled. "How did you come to live alone in these mountains?" she asked, curious about this solitary man who had so unexpectedly become her protector. Gabriel poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks dancing upward. "Came west after the war, the big one between the states. Fought for the Union. Saw things no man should see. Afterward, couldn't stomach being around too many people." He glanced at her. "The mountains have a way of clearing a man's head. And your family, the woman and girl in the photograph," a shadow crossed his face. "My wife Hannah and our daughter Mary. They died of typhoid while I was away fighting. I came back to nothing." His voice was matter-of-fact, but Olivia could hear the pain beneath the simple statement. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "You've lost so much." Gabriel nodded once, acknowledging her sympathy without inviting more. "What about you? How did a woman like you end up married to Vernon Schofield?" Olivia pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "My father died when I was 16, left my mother and me with debts we couldn't pay. We moved to Denver to live with my aunt, who was determined to see me suitably married as quickly as possible." She gave a bitter laugh. "Vernon was visiting from Central City on business. He was handsome, charming, and most importantly to my aunt, financially secure. He seemed like salvation." "He showed you only what he wanted you to see," Gabriel said, understanding in his voice. The real Vernon emerged slowly after the wedding. A harsh word here, a shove there. By the time I understood what kind of man he truly was, we were already isolated in his cabin outside of town, miles from anyone who might help. Olivia stared into the flames. My mother died last year. After that, there was no one left who would even notice if I disappeared. Yet here you are, Gabriel said. You found the courage to fight back. I didn't feel courageous, Olivia admitted, just desperate. Courage often looks like desperation from the inside. Gabriel added another stick to the fire. You should try to sleep. Tomorrow will be another long day. Despite her physical exhaustion, sleep eluded Olivia. She lay wrapped in her blanket, listening to the rain and Gabriel's occasional movements as he kept watch. This strange man with his quiet strength and hidden sorrows had become her only hope in less than 2 days. She knew almost nothing about him, yet she was trusting him with her life. Gabriel, she whispered, unsure if he was still awake. Yes. His response came immediately from his position near the entrance to their shelter. Thank you, not just for helping me escape, but for seeing me. For believing me. There was a long silence before he replied. Get some rest, Olivia. We still have a long way to go. Morning brought clear skies but colder temperatures. Frost glittered on the ground beyond their sheltered overhang, and their breath formed white clouds in the crisp air. Their clothes had dried overnight, though they were stiff and smelled strongly of smoke from the fire. They set out as soon as they'd eaten a cold breakfast, climbing steadily higher into the mountains. The terrain grew increasingly difficult: steep slopes, dense thickets, an occasional rocky scree that threatened to twist an ankle with each step. Gabriel maintained a challenging pace, but he frequently checked to ensure Olivia was managing. By midday, they had reached a high ridge that offered a panoramic view of the surrounding wilderness. Gabriel pointed to a distant valley, tucked between 2 imposing mountain ranges. My cabin's down there, near that stand of aspens. We should reach it before dark if we push hard. Olivia nodded, though her legs trembled with fatigue. The bruises from Vernon's last attack still pained her, and the cut on her forehead throbbed in rhythm with her heartbeat. But the prospect of proper shelter and a night without fear drove her forward. They were descending toward a narrow pass when Gabriel suddenly raised his hand in warning, dropping into a crouch. Olivia followed suit instantly, her heart racing. Riders, he whispered, pointing to a trail below them. 3 of them. Through the trees, Olivia could make out men on horseback moving slowly along a trail they would have crossed in another 10 minutes. Even from this distance, she recognized the set of the lead rider's shoulders: Sheriff Schofield, Vernon's brother. They're heading away from us, Gabriel murmured, but this changes things. They've expanded their search farther north than I expected. They remained hidden until the riders disappeared from view. Then Gabriel led them on a more circuitous route that added hours to their journey, but kept them well away from established trails. The sun was setting by the time they finally approached Gabriel's second cabin, casting long shadows through the trees and painting the western sky in vivid oranges and pinks. Unlike his primary residence, this structure was smaller and more primitive, little more than a one-room shelter built against the side of a hill, partially concealed by a thicket of young pines. Inside, it contained only the barest essentials: a narrow cot, a small cast-iron stove, a rough-hewn table with a single stool, and shelves stocked with preserved food and supplies. It's not much, Gabriel said, echoing his words from 2 nights before. But it's secure. Few people know it exists. It's perfect, Olivia said sincerely, sinking onto the stool as her legs finally gave out. The simple wooden walls felt like a fortress after 2 days of vulnerability in the open wilderness. Gabriel efficiently prepared the cabin, lighting the stove and retrieving supplies from a small root cellar accessible through a trapdoor similar to the one in his other home. Soon, a pot of beans simmered on the stove, and the cabin had warmed enough that Olivia could remove her coat. As they ate their simple meal, Gabriel outlined the next phase of their plan. "We'll rest here tomorrow," he said. "You need to recover your strength, and I need to scout the area, make sure those riders haven't left anyone watching the trails." "What about the stagecoach you mentioned?" Olivia asked. "It passes about 5 miles from here, twice weekly. Next one should be 3 days from now." Gabriel's expression was serious. "It'll be the most dangerous part of our journey. We'll be exposed, and the stage stops in towns where people might recognize you." "Or you," Olivia pointed out. "If they discover you've helped me, you'll be in as much danger as I am." Gabriel shrugged, dismissing his own risk. "I'll worry about that if it happens. For now, let's focus on getting you to Denver." He hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking about what you said." "About Oregon?" Olivia looked up, surprised. "Yes. There might be sense in it, not joining you," he clarified quickly, "but leaving Colorado for a time. Let things cool down." "Would you really leave your home?" Olivia asked, touched that he was considering it. "These cabins are just places." Gabriel's gaze was distant. "I came to the mountains to find peace after the war, after losing Hannah and Mary. Maybe I've been here long enough." Olivia wanted to reach out, to touch his hand in sympathy, but something in his demeanor kept her at a respectful distance. This man who had risked everything for her remained a mystery, in many ways approachable yet solitary, kind yet guarded. "Well," she said instead, "whatever you decide, I'm grateful our paths crossed." Gabriel nodded, a ghost of a smile crossing his face. "As am I, Mrs. Schofield. As am I." That night, Olivia slept deeply for the first time since her flight from Vernon's cabin. The cot was narrow and hard, but after 2 days of travel, it felt luxurious. Gabriel slept on the floor near the stove, having again refused her offers to trade places. She woke to the scent of coffee and found Gabriel already dressed, preparing to leave. "I'll be gone most of the day," he explained, checking his rifle. "There's food in the pantry. Keep the door barred and stay inside. No smoke from the stove if you can help it. It can be seen for miles in this clear air." "Be careful," Olivia said, suddenly anxious at the prospect of being alone. Gabriel paused at the door. "I always am. Rest today. You'll need your strength." After he'd gone, Olivia found herself at loose ends. The cabin was too small to occupy her for long, and Gabriel's admonition to stay inside left her with little to do. She organized their supplies, mended a tear in her borrowed shirt with needle and thread from Gabriel's pack, and read a few pages from a dog-eared copy of The Last of the Mohicans that she found tucked beneath the cot. As midday approached, restlessness drove her to the cabin's single window. The view was spectacular. A valley spread below, ringed by mountains whose peaks were still capped with snow even in the summer heat. Aspen trees shimmered silver-green in the breeze, and a stream glinted like a ribbon of mercury as it wound through meadows bright with wildflowers. It was beautiful, peaceful, everything her life with Vernon had not been. For the first time, Olivia allowed herself to imagine what freedom might truly mean. Not just escape from Vernon, but the opportunity to build something new. In Oregon, no one would know her history. No one would look at her as Vernon Schofield's troublesome wife. She could be simply Olivia, a woman with her own dreams and desires. What those dreams might be, she wasn't yet sure. For so long, survival had been her only goal. The sound of approaching footsteps interrupted her thoughts. She moved quickly away from the window, heart pounding, until Gabriel's familiar pattern of walking reassured her. When he entered, however, His expression sent fear coursing through her once more. "What's happened?" she asked. "They've expanded the search," Gabriel said grimly, placing his rifle by the door. "Found tracks near my other cabin. They know someone's been helping you." "Oh God," Olivia whispered. "Vernon will kill you if he finds out. He'll have to catch me first." Gabriel removed his hat, running a hand through his hair. "We need to change our plans. The stage is too risky now. They'll be watching it. We'll have to find another way to Denver." "How?" "I have a friend in Hot Sulphur Springs. He drives a supply wagon to Denver every 2 weeks. If we can reach him before he leaves, he might take us." Gabriel began gathering supplies, his movements quick and efficient. "We need to leave tonight under cover of darkness." "Tonight?" Olivia looked out the window at the sun still high in the sky. "But you just got back. You must be exhausted." "We don't have a choice." Gabriel's voice was firm. "They're getting closer, and they know these mountains almost as well as I do. Our best chance is to move fast and stay ahead of them." That evening, as dusk settled over the valley, they prepared to leave the relative safety of the cabin. Gabriel had spent the remaining daylight hours planning their route, drawing a rough map in the dirt floor and making Olivia memorize key landmarks. "If we get separated," he said, "head northeast toward the hot springs. Tell anyone who'll listen that you're looking for Oscar Miller. He'll help you." "We won't get separated," Olivia said with more confidence than she felt. Gabriel met her eyes. "Promise me you'll remember. Oscar Miller in Hot Sulphur Springs." "I promise," she said solemnly. They left as the first stars appeared, moving silently through the forest. Gabriel set a slower pace than before, more cautious now that they knew search parties were nearby. They traveled through the night, stopping only for brief rests when Olivia's strength began to flag. Near dawn, they reached a narrow ravine where a stream had cut deep into the earth. Gabriel led her to a protected spot beneath an overhanging bank where they could rest during daylight hours without being easily spotted from above. "Try to sleep," he advised as they huddled in their small shelter. "I'll keep watch." "You need rest too," Olivia protested. "You've barely slept in days." "I'll rest when we're safe," he said, but the exhaustion in his voice was evident. Olivia reached out impulsively, laying her hand over his. "We're safer if you're alert. Sleep for a few hours. I'll wake you if anything happens." Gabriel hesitated, then nodded, relenting. 2 hours. No more. He settled beside her, his back against the earthen wall of their shelter, rifle across his lap even in repose. Within minutes, his breathing had deepened into sleep, his body finally surrendering to exhaustion. Olivia watched over him, studying the face that had become so familiar in such a short time. In sleep, the lines of worry eased from his brow, making him appear younger. She wondered what sort of man he had been before war and loss had shaped him into this solitary mountain dweller. A twig snapped somewhere above them. Olivia froze, her gaze darting to the rim of the ravine. No further sound followed, but her heart continued to race. She debated waking Gabriel, but decided against it, likely just a deer or some other forest creature. Another snap, closer this time and definitely not made by an animal. Olivia nudged Gabriel urgently. His eyes opened instantly, fully alert despite his interrupted sleep. "Someone's up there," she whispered. Gabriel nodded once, signaling his understanding. He moved to the edge of their shelter, peering carefully upward. "2 men," he murmured, so quietly she could barely hear him. "On horseback." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. Had they been spotted? Were Vernon's men already closing in? Gabriel returned to her side. "They're following the stream, heading downstream. If they keep going, they'll miss us." They remained motionless, barely breathing as the sounds of horses and men passed overhead. Olivia could hear snippets of conversation, complaints about the cold night. speculation about which direction that woman might have gone, a crude joke about what Vernon would do when he caught his wife. Only when the sounds had faded completely did Gabriel relax his vigilant posture. "They're gone," he said, "but they're too close for comfort. We need to move as soon as it's dark." The day passed with agonizing slowness. They ate sparingly from their dwindling supplies, speaking little. Olivia could sense Gabriel's increasing tension. The search was closing in, their options narrowing. As the light began to fade, Gabriel outlined their plan for the night. "We'll follow the ravine for about 3 miles, then climb out and head east. There's a ridge there that leads toward hot sulfur springs. If we push hard, we can reach Oscar's place by tomorrow night." The journey that followed tested Olivia's endurance to its limit. The ravine floor was treacherous, slippery with moss, and uneven with rocks that turned underfoot. They were forced to cross the stream repeatedly as the ravine narrowed and widened, each crossing leaving their boots and trouser legs soaked in icy water. When they finally emerged onto higher ground, the night had deepened to the blackest hour before dawn. Gabriel paused to orient himself by the stars, then led them eastward at a punishing pace. Olivia stumbled frequently, her legs leaden with fatigue, but Gabriel's steady presence beside her kept her moving forward. As the first hint of dawn lightened the eastern sky, they reached the promised ridge, a long, narrow spine of rock and earth that extended like a finger pointing toward their destination. Gabriel found a dense thicket where they could conceal themselves for the daylight hours. "How much farther?" Olivia asked, sinking to the ground in exhaustion. "We're more than halfway," Gabriel said, offering her the last of their water. "Hot Sulphur Springs lies in the valley beyond that mountain." He pointed to a distinctive peak silhouetted against the brightening sky. "And your friend Oscar, you're sure he'll help us?" "Oscar owes me his life," Gabriel said simply. "He won't turn us away." Olivia nodded, too tired to question further. As she settled against a tree trunk, preparing for another day of anxious waiting, Gabriel suddenly stiffened, his head turning sharply toward the way they had come. "What is it?" she whispered. "Horses," he replied grimly. "Moving fast, they must have found our trail." Panic surged through Olivia's veins. "What do we do?" Gabriel was already gathering their few possessions. "We run. Now." They abandoned the shelter of the thicket, all caution forgotten in the need for speed. Gabriel led them along the ridge, no longer trying to hide their tracks but focusing solely on putting distance between themselves and their pursuers. The sound of hoofbeats grew louder behind them. Olivia's lungs burned with each breath, her legs threatening to buckle with every step. Only fear kept her moving, fear of Vernon, fear of what would happen if they were caught. The ridge narrowed dangerously, the ground falling away sharply on either side. Gabriel slowed their pace, concerned about the treacherous footing. This caution might have saved their lives but cost them their lead. The riders appeared behind them, 4 men on horseback with Vernon's brother leading the pack. "There they are!" The shout carried clearly across the ridge. Gabriel pulled Olivia behind an outcropping of rock. "Stay here," he ordered, raising his rifle. "No," Olivia clutched his arm. "You can't shoot the sheriff. They'll hang you for certain." "I'm not aiming to kill," Gabriel said, his voice steady. "Just to slow them down." He fired a shot that kicked up dirt near the lead horse's hooves. The animal reared in panic, nearly unseating its rider. Gabriel fired again, this time striking a rock near the second horse, sending splinters of stone flying. The riders pulled back, seeking cover. "Go," Gabriel urged, pushing Olivia toward the far end of the ridge. "Run as hard as you can. Don't stop until you reach the valley." "Not without you," she insisted. "I'll be right behind you." He fired another warning shot. "Go now," Olivia ran, her heart hammering against her ribs. The ridge began to descend, offering more cover as stunted pines and brush appeared. Behind her, she heard more gunshots, Gabriel exchanging fire with the pursuers, buying her time with each shot. The ridge widened into a sloping hillside, and Olivia found herself in a forest of lodgepole pines. She paused, gasping for breath, listening for Gabriel's footsteps. Nothing. Only the distant echo of gunfire. She couldn't leave him. After everything he'd done, she couldn't abandon him to face Vernon's men alone. Olivia retraced her steps cautiously, moving from tree to tree for cover. As she neared the ridge again, the gunfire had ceased. An ominous silence hung over the landscape. Then she saw him, Gabriel, moving quickly toward her but with a pronounced limp. Blood darkened the fabric of his trousers just above his right knee. "You're hurt," she cried, rushing to his side. "It's not bad," he grunted, though his face was pale with pain. "Bullet just grazed me, but they'll be coming. I only delayed them." Olivia pulled his arm across her shoulders, supporting his weight. "Lean on me. We need to find somewhere to tend that wound." They moved as quickly as Gabriel's injury allowed, deeper into the forest. The terrain sloped steadily downward, bringing them closer to the valley where hot sulfur springs waited with its promise of sanctuary. After nearly an hour of difficult progress, they found what they needed: a small cave formed by fallen boulders, concealed by a curtain of vines and saplings. Inside, it was dry and large enough for both of them to sit comfortably. "We can rest here," Olivia said, helping Gabriel to sit with his back against the cave wall. "Let me see your leg." The wound was worse than he'd admitted, a deep furrow carved into the flesh of his thigh, still bleeding freely. Olivia tore strips from her shirt to create a makeshift bandage, working quickly and efficiently. "You've done this before," Gabriel observed through gritted teeth. "Vernon's temper often left marks that needed tending," she replied, her voice flat. "I became practiced at treating wounds." Gabriel's expression darkened. "I'm sorry. It wasn't your doing." Olivia secured the bandage tightly. "This will hold for now, but the wound needs proper cleaning as soon as possible." "Oscar has medical supplies," Gabriel said. "If we can reach him by nightfall." "You can't walk that far," Olivia interrupted. "Not today. The bleeding will start again." Gabriel's jaw set stubbornly. "We can't stay here. Vernon's men won't give up so easily." "Then I'll go," Olivia said, her decision forming even as she spoke the words. "I'll find Oscar and bring help back." "No," Gabriel protested. "It's too dangerous. If they catch you, they're looking for a woman with a man," Olivia pointed out. "A lone young man won't draw their attention." Gabriel studied her face, seeing the determination there. "You don't know the way." "You've described it often enough. Follow the valley northeast until I reach the hot springs. Ask for Oscar Miller." Olivia met his gaze steadily. "I can do this, Gabriel." After a long moment, he nodded reluctantly. "Take the pistol," he said, removing a revolver from his belt. 6 shots. Use them only if you have no choice." Olivia tucked the weapon into her waistband, praying she wouldn't need to use it. She gathered what supplies she could carry: the remaining water, a small amount of jerky, Gabriel's compass. "I'll be back with help before dawn," she promised, pausing at the cave entrance. "Just stay alive until then." Gabriel's smile was strained but genuine. "I intend to. Be careful, Olivia." With those words echoing in her mind, Olivia stepped out of the cave and into the wilderness alone for the first time since her flight from Vernon. The responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders. Gabriel's life now depended on her ability to navigate this unfamiliar terrain and find help. The day was well advanced, the sun already past its zenith. Olivia calculated she had perhaps 5 hours of daylight remaining. If Gabriel's estimates were correct, Hot Sulphur Springs was at least 8 hours away on foot. She would have to travel part of the journey in darkness. Setting the compass as Gabriel had shown her, Olivia oriented herself northeast and began walking with purposeful strides. The forest gradually thinned as she descended into the valley, giving way to meadows bright with summer wildflowers. Under different circumstances, she might have paused to admire the beauty surrounding her. Now, she noted only the position of the sun, the landmarks Gabriel had described, and any sign of pursuers. As the afternoon waned, Olivia came upon a well-used trail, the first she'd seen in days. It led in approximately the right direction, and she decided to follow it, reasoning that it might lead to the settlement more directly than her cross-country route. The decision nearly proved disastrous. She had followed the trail for less than an hour when she heard the unmistakable sound of horses approaching. With no time to hide, Olivia pulled her hat low over her face, hunched her shoulders in what she hoped was a masculine posture, and continued walking as if she belonged there. 3 riders appeared around a bend in the trail, not Vernon's search party, but ordinary travelers. 2 men and a woman, well-dressed and clearly from town. Olivia kept her head down as they passed, responding to their greeting with a grunt that could have come from a taciturn young man. The encounter left her shaken but determined to be more cautious. She abandoned the trail, returning to the more difficult but safer route through the less traveled terrain. As darkness fell, Olivia's progress slowed considerably. Even with the compass and a bright half-moon to guide her, navigating the unfamiliar landscape was treacherous. Twice, she nearly lost her way completely, saved only by remembering Gabriel's descriptions of key landmarks: a distinctive rock formation, a bend in the creek that ran through the valley. Near midnight, exhausted and beginning to doubt her decision to leave Gabriel, Olivia crested a small rise and saw lights twinkling in the distance. Hot Sulphur Springs lay before her, a scattered collection of buildings nestled against the mountainside, steam rising ghostly white in the moonlight from the natural springs that gave the settlement its name. Relief flooded through her, temporarily washing away her fatigue. She had made it. Now she just had to find Oscar Miller in a town of strangers, convince him to help, and return to Gabriel before Vernon's men found him. Approaching the town cautiously, Olivia was grateful for the late hour that meant few people were about. Those who were mostly men leaving the saloon that formed the center of nighttime activity paid little attention to what appeared to be a young man walking purposefully through town. Finding Oscar proved easier than she'd feared. When she asked a stable boy where she might locate Oscar Miller, the youth pointed without hesitation to a modest house on the edge of town. "Old Oscar lives there with his daughter," the boy said, "but he won't thank you for waking him at this hour." Olivia thanked him and approached the house with renewed determination. A light still burned in one window. Someone was awake despite the late hour. She knocked softly, then more firmly when there was no immediate response. The door opened a crack, revealing a girl of perhaps 16, her expression wary. "What do you want?" she demanded. "I'm looking for Oscar Miller," Olivia said, keeping her voice low. "Gabriel Quinn sent me. He needs help urgently." At the mention of Gabriel's name, the girl's demeanor changed instantly. She opened the door wider. "Come in quickly," she said, glancing past Olivia as if expecting others to follow. "I'll wake my father." Inside, the house was simple but comfortable, a marked contrast to the primitive cabins where Olivia had spent the past days. The girl who introduced herself as Emma disappeared into a back room, returning moments later with a grizzled man of about 60, hastily pulling on a shirt over his night clothes. "Gabriel sent you, you say?" Oscar's voice was gruff, but concern showed in his weathered face. What's happened to him?" Olivia removed her hat, revealing her face fully for the first time. Oscar's eyes widened in recognition. "You're the Schofield woman," he said. "The one they're hunting." "Yes," Olivia admitted, seeing no point in denial. "Gabriel helped me escape my husband. Now he's wounded, hiding in the mountains, and Vernon's men are closing in. He needs your help, we both do." Oscar studied her intently, then nodded once. "Emma, fetch my medicine kit and some food, and wake your brother, we'll need his help too." Within the hour, a small rescue party had assembled Oscar, his son James, a young man of about 20, and Olivia. Emma remained behind, reluctantly agreeing to maintain the fiction that her father and brother had left early for Denver if anyone should ask. They traveled on horseback, Olivia riding double with James as she directed them back toward the cave where she'd left Gabriel. The return journey was much faster than her outward trek, but Olivia's anxiety grew with each passing mile. Had Vernon's men found Gabriel in her absence? Was he still alive? Dawn was breaking as they approached the area where the cave was located. Olivia dismounted, insisting on approaching on foot first to ensure no one was watching. "Gabriel," she called softly as she neared the concealed entrance. "It's Olivia. I've brought help." No response came from within the cave. Heart pounding, Olivia pushed aside the curtain of vegetation and peered inside. Empty. No sign of Gabriel except for a blood-stained patch of ground where he had sat. "He's gone," she reported numbly to Oscar and James. "There's blood, but I can't tell if—" "Look here," Oscar interrupted, examining the ground outside the cave. "Someone was dragged. No help to walk. See how the footprints are uneven. One person supporting another." "Could be Vernon's men found him," James suggested grimly. "Or he could have tried to follow me when I didn't return as quickly as planned," Olivia said, hope and fear warring within her. Oscar studied the trail with expert eyes. 2 sets of prints besides his. Not dragging a prisoner supporting an injured man. These aren't lawmen's boots. Then who? Olivia demanded. Oscar straightened, his expression thoughtful. "There's a band of Ute who still camp in these mountains during the summer. They keep to themselves mostly, but Gabriel's traded with them for years. They might have found him." "Would they help him?" Olivia asked anxiously. "More likely than not. Gabriel saved their headman's son from drowning 2 springs back." Oscar mounted his horse. "I know where their summer camp usually is. It's not far." They followed the faint trail left by Gabriel and his rescuers, climbing back toward the ridge where the confrontation with Vernon's men had occurred. About a mile beyond, in a protected valley with a clear spring, they found what they were seeking: a small encampment of perhaps a dozen lodges. Their approach was noted immediately. Several men emerged, rifles ready but not aimed directly at the newcomers. Oscar raised his hand in greeting, speaking a few words in the Ute language. After a brief exchange, they were escorted into the camp and to one of the larger lodges. Inside, lying on a bed of furs, was Gabriel. His wounded leg had been properly bandaged, and an elderly woman was tending to him, applying a poultice of herbs to the injury. "Gabriel!" Olivia rushed to his side, relief washing over her in a dizzying wave. He looked pale but alert, his eyes brightening when he saw her. "You made it," he said, his voice stronger than she had feared it might be. "I found Oscar, just as you said." Olivia knelt beside him, resisting the urge to touch him, to reassure herself that he was truly alive. "When I returned and found you gone. Spotted Elk's hunting party found me shortly after you left," Gabriel explained, nodding toward a dignified man standing nearby. "I was trying to follow you, foolish of me, but I was worried when night fell and you hadn't returned." Oscar joined them, conversing briefly with the Ute leader before turning to Olivia. Spotted Elk says Gabriel was feverish when they found him. They've been treating the wound with their medicines, which are probably better than anything I could have done. We are in their debt, Olivia said, looking gratefully at the Ute man. Spotted Elk spoke in halting English. Quinn is friend to my people. No debt. Over the next day, Gabriel's strength returned gradually. The Ute healer's treatments proved effective, reducing the fever and inflammation that might have claimed his life without intervention. Olivia remained by his side, helping to change his bandages and ensuring he ate the nourishing broth prepared by the Ute women. Oscar returned to Hot Sulphur Springs, promising to make arrangements for their journey to Denver as soon as Gabriel was strong enough to travel. James remained with them as an extra measure of protection. Though the Ute camp was perhaps the safest place they could be, few white men ventured into this territory, and Vernon's search party would likely avoid it entirely. On the evening of their second day in the camp, Olivia sat beside Gabriel outside his lodge, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. They had spoken little of personal matters since their reunion, focusing instead on practical concerns of healing and escape. "Thank you," Gabriel said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence between them, "for finding Oscar, for not giving up." Olivia smiled softly. "How could I give up on you after all you've done for me?" Gabriel shifted, wincing slightly as the movement disturbed his healing leg. "In my pack, there's a leather pouch," he said. "Would you bring it to me?" Curious, Olivia retrieved the item, a small, worn leather bag drawn closed with a rawhide thong. Gabriel opened it carefully, tipping the contents into his palm. A gold ring set with a small but perfect diamond glinted in the fading light. "This was Hannah's," he said quietly. "I've carried it with me since she died, a reminder of what I once had." Olivia gazed at the ring, touched that he would share something so personal. "She must have been a remarkable woman." "She was," Gabriel agreed, "strong, determined, kind." His eyes met Olivia's. "Like you." Warmth flooded Olivia's face at the unexpected comparison. "I'm not, you are," he insisted gently. "You survived years with a man who tried to break your spirit. You found the courage to fight back. You've traveled through wilderness most town-bred women would find terrifying. You saved my life." "You saved mine first," she reminded him. Gabriel smiled, a real smile that transformed his usually serious face. "Perhaps we've saved each other." The simple statement hung between them, laden with meaning neither was quite ready to acknowledge. Gabriel returned the ring to its pouch, securing it carefully. "When we reach Denver," he said, "you'll have choices to make. The wagon train to Oregon is just one possibility." "What other possibilities do you see?" Olivia asked, suddenly aware of how much she valued this man's opinion. Gabriel looked toward the mountains, now silhouetted black against the deepening blue of twilight. "The world is wider than Vernon Schofield ever allowed you to see. You might find work in Denver or continue west to California. You might even go east, start fresh in a city where no one knows your past. And what will you do?" The question that had been forming in her mind for days finally found voice. "Will you return to your cabin in the mountains?" "I don't know," Gabriel admitted. "For the first time in years, my path seems uncertain." Olivia gathered her courage. "Earlier, when I suggested you might come to Oregon, that wasn't merely gratitude speaking, I meant it." Gabriel's gaze returned to her face, searching. "Why?" "Because I've come to care for you," she said simply, honestly. "Because in these few days, you've shown me more kindness, more respect than Vernon did in 3 years of marriage. Because when I think of building a new life, I find I want you to be part of it." The confession hung between them, changing everything and nothing. Gabriel didn't respond immediately, and Olivia felt a flash of embarrassment at her boldness. She had known this man barely a week. What right did she have to impose on his future? "Forgive me," she said quickly. "That was presumptuous." "No," Gabriel interrupted, his hand finding hers in the gathering darkness. "It wasn't presumptuous, it was brave." His fingers tightened around hers. "I've lived alone with ghosts for too long. When I found you in those woods, something changed. I felt useful again. Needed. It reminded me there's more to life than survival." "Is that all I am? A reminder?" Olivia asked, needing to understand. Gabriel shook his head slowly. "You're a beginning," he said, "if you want to be." In that moment, with the first stars appearing overhead and the distant sound of the Ute camp settling for the night, Olivia recognized the truth. She had begun to fall in love with this quiet, honorable man who had risked everything for a stranger. It was too soon, perhaps even foolish given all they had yet to face, but the feeling was there nonetheless. "I would like that very much," she whispered. Gabriel's response was to bring her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss against her knuckles. It was a gesture of old-fashioned courtesy, but in that moment, it felt more intimate than any touch Olivia had ever experienced. The next morning brought news from Oscar. He had arranged for them to travel to Denver with a trader heading that way in 2 days' time. The wagon train for Oregon wouldn't depart for another week, giving Gabriel time to heal further before the long journey. "And," Oscar added with a significant look at Gabriel, "I heard something else in town. Vernon Schofield is pulling back his search parties. Word is he's too badly injured to continue leading them himself, and his brother has been called to handle a situation in Idaho Springs." Olivia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "Does that mean it's safer to travel now?" "Safer, yes. Safe, no." Oscar's expression remained serious. "Vernon may be temporarily disabled, but he's not a man who forgives or forgets. As long as you remain in Colorado territory, you're at risk." Gabriel, now able to walk with the aid of a crudely fashioned cane, joined the conversation. "All the more reason to join that wagon train. Oregon's a long way from Vernon Schofield's influence." Preparations for their departure began immediately. The Ute people, having taken a liking to Olivia during her stay, presented her with gifts: a pair of finely made moccasins, a rabbit fur-lined vest, and a small medicine pouch containing herbs the healer assured her would help Gabriel's wound continue to heal. On the morning they were to leave, Spotted Elk approached Gabriel privately. Olivia observed their conversation from a distance, noting the serious expressions of both men. When Gabriel rejoined her, he seemed thoughtful. "What did he want?" she asked. "To give his blessing," Gabriel replied, a hint of wonder in his voice. "He says he's seen how we look at each other. In their tradition, a man who saves a woman's life is responsible for her happiness thereafter." Olivia felt warmth rise to her cheeks. "And what did you say?" "I told him I intended to honor that responsibility," Gabriel said quietly, "if you'll allow it." Before Olivia could respond, Oscar and James arrived with their transport, a sturdy wagon pulled by a team of 4 horses, driven by a weathered man introduced as Hiram Blackwell, the trader heading to Denver. Their leave-taking from the Ute camp was brief, but heartfelt. Spotted Elk clasped forearms with Gabriel in the warrior's farewell, while the women presented Olivia with additional supplies for the journey. As the wagon rumbled down the mountain trail toward Hot Sulphur Springs, Olivia found herself seated beside Gabriel in the back, surrounded by Hiram's trade goods. The closeness was both comforting and unsettling. Comforting in the sense of security his presence provided, unsettling in the awareness of him as a man rather than merely a protector. "Did you mean what you told Spotted Elk?" she asked after they had traveled some distance in companionable silence. Gabriel turned to her, his eyes serious. "I never say things I don't mean, Olivia." "What exactly are you saying, then?" He considered his words carefully before responding. "I'm saying that if you'll have me, I'd like to court you properly. Not here, not while we're still running, but when we reach Oregon. When you're truly free." Olivia's heart swelled with an emotion she had almost forgotten: hope. Not the desperate hope of escape that had driven her these past days, but the warm, expansive hope of happiness. "I would like that very much," she said, echoing her words from the night before. Gabriel smiled, that rare, transformative expression that made him look younger, unburdened. He took her hand, and they rode that way for miles, connected by that simple touch and by the promise of a future neither had imagined possible a week ago. The journey to Denver passed without incident, Hiram's wagon following established trails that kept them well away from Central City, and Vernon's remaining searchers. Gabriel's strength returned steadily, though he would always carry a slight limp from the bullet wound, a permanent reminder of what they had risked for freedom. In Denver, they found lodging in a modest boarding house run by a widow who asked few questions and offered clean rooms at reasonable rates. Oscar had provided them with enough money to last until the wagon train's departure alone. He insisted that Gabriel could repay when he was settled in Oregon. Their first day in the city, they visited a dressmaker's shop where Olivia was fitted for 2 simple but practical dresses suitable for the long journey west. The sensation of wearing women's clothing again after days in Gabriel's borrowed garments was strange but welcome. "You look lovely," Gabriel said simply, when she emerged from the shop in her new blue calico dress. His straightforward compliment meant more to Olivia than all of Vernon's elaborate flatteries ever had. Vernon had praised her beauty when it suited him, using admiration as yet another tool of control. Gabriel's words carried no expectation, no demand, just honest appreciation. As the days passed, they established a routine: mornings spent gathering supplies for their journey, afternoons visiting the wagon train master to finalize arrangements, evenings sharing quiet meals in their boarding house, or occasionally at a small restaurant near the city center. They were careful to present themselves as brother and sister to avoid scandal, though Olivia was painfully aware that she was still legally married to Vernon. The deception weighed on her, but Gabriel assured her that in Oregon, where they would be starting fresh, the truth of their relationship could be acknowledged. "Besides," he added pragmatically, "Vernon may yet decide to divorce you for abandonment. It would suit his pride better than admitting his wife fled from abuse." 3 days before their planned departure, as they were returning from purchasing the last of their supplies, Olivia froze in the middle of the crowded street. Gabriel, instantly alert to her distress, followed her gaze to a man exiting a shop across the way. It wasn't Vernon, but it was someone almost as dangerous. Thomas Reed, Vernon's closest friend and business partner, a man who had witnessed Vernon's abuse and done nothing to stop it. "He'll recognize me," Olivia whispered, terror constricting her throat. Gabriel reacted swiftly, guiding her into a narrow alley between buildings. "Did he see you?" "I don't think so," Olivia said, though uncertainty colored her voice. The street was crowded. "We need to leave Denver," Gabriel decided. "Tonight, if possible. The wagon train isn't scheduled to depart for 2 more days, but I'll speak to Martin," came a familiar voice from behind them. Oscar stepped into the alley, his expression grave. "I saw you duck in here. What's happened?" Quickly, they explained the situation. Oscar nodded, unsurprised. "Denver's not as big as it seems. I'll talk to Martin Callahan, he's the wagon master. Convince him to pull out early, say there's favorable weather coming that we should take advantage of." "He'll do that," Olivia asked. For the right incentive, Oscar confirmed. Go back to your boarding house. Pack only what you can carry easily. I'll come for you after dark. True to his word, Oscar returned shortly after nightfall. The wagon train was preparing for an early departure, he reported. They would leave at dawn rather than waiting the additional days originally planned. Thomas Reed is staying at the Denver hotel, he added. I made some inquiries. He's here on business, due to return to Central City tomorrow afternoon. If we're lucky, he'll never know you were here. They spent a tense night at the encampment where the wagons had gathered on the outskirts of Denver. 26 wagons in all, filled with families seeking new opportunities in the Oregon Territory. Gabriel and Olivia would be traveling in Oscar's wagon. He had decided to accompany them all the way to Oregon, having long considered relocating to be near his married son who had settled there years earlier. As dawn broke, the wagon train began its slow procession westward. Olivia sat beside Gabriel on the wagon seat, watching Denver recede behind them. With each mile that passed, the tension in her shoulders eased slightly. We made it, she said softly when the city had disappeared from view entirely. The journey's just beginning, Gabriel reminded her gently. I know, Olivia acknowledged, but we're on our way. That's something. The Oregon Trail proved to be exactly as challenging as they had been warned. Days of monotonous travel across the plains were punctuated by moments of crisis, river crossings that threatened to overturn wagons, axles that broke and required repair, brief encounters with Indian tribes that ended peacefully but left some travelers nervous. Through it all, Gabriel remained a steadfast presence at Olivia's side. Their relationship deepened as they faced each challenge together, their growing feelings expressed more in actions than words. A hand offered during a difficult crossing, a cup of coffee prepared exactly as the other preferred. The sharing of a blanket on cold nights when they sat by the campfire. As the weeks passed and they crossed into Wyoming territory, Olivia began to truly believe in the possibility of their future together. The nightmares of Vernon that had plagued her early in their journey became less frequent. The cut on her forehead healed completely, leaving only a faint silver line as a reminder of her last night in Central City. They were 2 months into their journey, the wagon train making steady progress across the high plains of Wyoming, when the letter found them. A rider from the east, carrying mail for several members of their party, delivered a sealed envelope addressed to Gabriel. Oscar had arranged for any important correspondence to be forwarded to waypoints along their route, but they had received nothing until now. Gabriel opened the letter with a puzzled expression that quickly transformed to shock. "What is it?" Olivia asked, alarmed by his sudden pallor. Gabriel handed her the letter wordlessly. It was from a lawyer in Denver, dated 3 weeks earlier. "Dear Mr. Quinn," it began formally. "I am writing to inform you that Vernon Schofield died on August 17th from complications arising from his injuries. As his widow, Mrs. Olivia Schofield inherits his estate in its entirety, there being no children or other heirs. Please advise Mrs. Schofield to contact my office at her earliest convenience regarding the disposition of her property." Olivia read the words 3 times before their meaning fully registered. Vernon was dead. She was free, truly free, not just a fugitive hoping to disappear. "I don't understand," she said finally. "His brother should have inherited. Why would Vernon leave everything to me?" "He didn't," Gabriel said, having recovered from his initial shock. "Wyoming territory follows common law. A wife automatically inherits if there's no will stating otherwise. Vernon probably never thought to make one. He wouldn't have imagined you surviving him." "What does this mean for us?" Olivia asked, the letter trembling in her hands. Gabriel considered the question carefully. It means you have choices. You could return to Colorado, claim your inheritance. It might be substantial. Vernon-owned property, had interests in several mines. I don't want anything of his, Olivia said firmly. You earned it, Gabriel countered. With every bruise, every moment of fear, that inheritance is rightfully yours. Olivia thought of the cabin where she had suffered for 3 years, of Vernon's business interests built on bullying and intimidation. She thought of Central City, where people had witnessed her abuse and done nothing. Could she really return to that place, even as a wealthy widow rather than an abused wife? Then she looked at Gabriel, this good, honorable man who had risked everything to save her, when she was nothing to him but a desperate stranger. The man who had taught her what respect and kindness truly meant. The man she had grown to love during their journey. My future isn't in Colorado, she said with certainty. It's wherever you are. Gabriel's expression softened. You should still claim your inheritance, he advised practically. We could use it to build something in Oregon. Something that's ours, not tainted by Vernon's memory. Olivia nodded slowly, seeing the wisdom in his suggestion. I'll write to the lawyer. Ask him to sell everything and forward the proceeds. I never want to set foot in Central City again. That night, as they sat by the campfire after most of the other travelers had retired to their wagons, Gabriel reached into his pocket and withdrew the small leather pouch she had seen before. From it, he took Hannah's ring. I've carried this for 8 years, he said, turning the gold band in his fingers so it caught the firelight. Carrying the past with me wherever I went. Olivia remained silent, sensing the importance of this moment. I think Hannah would want it to symbolize a future now, not just a memory. Gabriel's eyes met hers across the flames. When we reach Oregon, when we've built our home and you're ready, I'd be honored if you would wear it. It wasn't a formal proposal that would come later when the timing was right, when they were settled in their new home. But it was a promise, one that Olivia accepted with a full heart. I would be honored, she echoed his words, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. Gabriel moved to sit beside her, taking her hand in his. Together they watched the fire burn down to embers, the future stretching before them like the vast landscape. They were crossing, challenging but filled with possibility. 2 months later, as autumn painted the forests of Oregon Territory in shades of gold and crimson, their wagon train reached its destination, the fertile Willamette Valley. The journey had been arduous, testing both their physical endurance and their commitment to each other, but they had emerged stronger for it. With the proceeds from Vernon's estate, which proved more substantial than either had imagined, they purchased a plot of land outside Salem, 50 acres of mixed forest and meadow with a clear stream running through it. By spring, a modest but comfortable house stood there, built with Gabriel's own hands and the help of neighbors who welcomed the newcomers to their community. They were married on a bright May morning in 1877, 8 months to the day after Gabriel had found Olivia fleeing through the Colorado wilderness. Oscar gave her away, having decided to settle permanently in Oregon himself, buying a small mercantile in Salem that quickly became a gathering place for the community. As Gabriel placed Hannah's ring on Olivia's finger, now a symbol of their future rather than his past, he spoke the words that had changed both their lives. He won't find you, and Vernon never would. In his place, Olivia had found something she had never truly experienced: a love built on respect, kindness, and mutual support. A love that had begun in desperate circumstances, but had blossomed into something enduring and profound. In the years that followed, the Quinn farm prospered. Gabriel's knowledge of hunting and trapping translated well to animal husbandry. while Olivia discovered a talent for gardening, her kitchen garden soon expanding to provide vegetables for neighboring families as well as their own. Their first child, a son they named James Oscar Quinn after the two men who had helped secure their escape, arrived a year after their marriage. He was joined 2 years later by a daughter, Hannah Marie, named for the mother Gabriel had lost and Olivia's own mother. On summer evenings, when the work of the day was done, Gabriel and Olivia would often sit on the porch of their home, watching their children play in the yard as the sun set behind the distant mountains. Sometimes, Olivia would think back to that night in the Colorado forest terrified, bloodied, certain her life was over. Instead, it had just begun. "What are you thinking about?" Gabriel asked on one such evening, 10 years after their arrival in Oregon. At 46, his hair was touched with silver at the temples, but his eyes were still as kind and steady as when she'd first met him. Olivia, now 35 and comfortable in the confidence of a woman who knows she is both respected and loved, smiled at her husband. "I was thinking about how sometimes the worst moment of your life can lead to the best." Gabriel nodded, understanding immediately what she meant. He took her hand, his thumb brushing over the gold band she had worn for a decade. "He didn't find you," he said softly, repeating the words that had become a private affirmation between them. "No," Olivia agreed, leaning her head against his shoulder as their children's laughter filled the twilight. "But I found myself, and I found you." They remained that way as darkness fell, surrounded by the life they had built together, secure in a love that had been forged in desperation, but had grown into something neither had dared to dream possible, a love that was strong enough to heal the past and build a future, one day at a time.